The day has finally come that we can start planting our vegetables out. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Trellis and Trails Homestead. We are planting out all of our plants today and tomorrow. It's probably going to take a couple of days to do all of this. And I need to get my trellis up in the middle beds, so that'll be a tomorrow project as well. But I have lots of things going here. I'm going to start with my peppers, I think. My tomatillos first and then my peppers and kind of go from there. I need to put all of the tomatoes in my tomato bed, but I need to dig really big holes for that, and I think I'm not going to do that until tomorrow. So those might wait until tomorrow to get planted out. There's over 300 plants here, and I'm definitely not going to be able to plant all of these in my garden, I don't think. So I'm just going to pick the biggest and strongest ones to plant out. And yeah, we'll start there. I do have 4 tomatillo plants. They're kind of already over there by the bed. I'm going to plant all 4 of them. They do get big, but I think if I use like tomato cages and kind of stake them up this year, I'll have plenty of room for them. So we're going to do that first, and then we'll get to everything else. This video is coming out quite a bit later than I originally planned for it to. I filmed this in the beginning of June and planted out my garden in the beginning of June. I think it was within the first few days of June, actually. And it is now closer to the end of the month. So, reason being, I have been dealing with quite a few health concerns. I've been dealing with some facial nerve pain over the last several months, actually over the last year, really. But the last several months that I've been trying to get treatment for and figure out how to manage it. And I started a medication a couple of months ago and ended up at the beginning of the month, actually, the beginning of June, started experiencing some extreme side effects from this medication. I had been taking it for about 7 weeks at this point and developed a extreme intolerance to it. I think I obviously was having symptoms the entire time because it wasn't truly helping with the pain that it was supposed to be helping with. It was helping with the pain, but I think it was causing me to have more headaches and other things. And then at the beginning of the month, I started experiencing extreme dizziness that wouldn't go away. And then just a few short weeks later, progressed into some other symptoms. Had a quick ER visit one night. Everything was fine. And afterwards, stopped the medication. So I was pretty non-functional for at least a week, if not more, which is why my videos have been lacking this month. Trying to get back in the game. I obviously have to heal myself before I can work on other projects. And especially being outside in the heat and the sunny weather, just the gardening and all of the activities that I like to participate in have definitely taken a back seat during all of this. I am getting better. I'm healing. I am trying to figure out some other ways to manage this nerve pain and go from there. So I'm trying to hop back into things slowly but surely. I'm really excited to get through the next couple of weeks because I have a really long break coming up where I can kind of focus on, again, just healing and working on the things that I want to work on at my own pace and what I'm capable of right now. And I do want to continue to share my gardening and other homesteading activities with you guys. That's been really fun for me. But I keep joking for several reasons. I keep saying that maybe 2024 was not the year to start a YouTube channel. But, you know, it comes with its own challenges, and I think this is just one of those. And if I can get through this and continue to stay on top of my videos and just share some little highlights here and there with you guys, I would like to continue to do that. So I'm hopeful for the rest of the summer. June wasn't a great start, but I'm hoping that the next couple of months I feel better and can do more of the activities that I want to do, and focus a little bit more on the garden. It really was a fine time, honestly, because the garden is just doing its own thing right now anyways, at the beginning of June here. beginning mid-June here in Colorado, it's kind of just doing its own thing. There's not a whole lot I can do. I planted everything out, of course, and will, fertilize occasionally and pull weeds and water the garden. But honestly, it's also been pretty rainy too. So I was actually really thankful for the rain during this time where I was not really able to go out and water the garden myself. Because nature just took care of itself and the rain watered the garden for me. And that was actually really, really nice during this time. So a couple of days prior to planting out the garden on this day, previously in the clip that you just saw, I had kind of set everything out and organized what I wanted to plant, got all the pepper varieties together, all of the tomato varieties together to see, number one, how many I had of each, and then get a game plan together for how many of each I wanted to plant, where I wanted to plant them, what I wanted to plant them with. So I took some time to sort of plan all of this out. I did go back in after the fact and add a couple of herbs and some other things here and there. Some zinnias, marigolds kind of throughout the beds. Just seeds of all of those. But just kind of got a basic layout of what I wanted to put in each bed. Kind of how many of each, how many I could fit. And I tried to follow mostly this square foot gardening method. If you don't know about that, you can do tons of research on it. There's a lot of resources out there on that. I don't have like the little square foot boards or anything to put the seeds in, but I kind of just estimate a square foot area and plant however many is appropriate within that square foot of each plant. And that varies depending on what kind of plants you're planting. So with peppers, it's usually 1 pepper per square foot. So I think I did 5 in each row, 5 each. And that might be a little bit much. I think 4 is probably a more appropriate number to give them enough room to grow and get big and do their thing. But I think that 5 is fine because I have such a short growing season. I'm just trying to maximize whatever I can get from the garden before we get our first frost, usually in September. So that's what we're doing here. So this raised garden bed is my pepper bed. You can see there the roots from where they've been in the cups, growing in the cups for the last couple of months. Really good, strong roots. The stems are nice and big and strong. So I planted my tomatillos. I had 3 tomatillo plants that I planted in here. I actually had 4, but 1 broke. And then I filled the rest of the bed in with other pepper varieties, hot peppers mostly. I then moved to my other back raised bed, the one just beside the previous one, and started planting peppers in this one as well. This was going to be sort of like my lettuce bed. I had lettuce and radishes already planted, and by the beginning of June, they still weren't really growing. I can even say here now, which I'll give you guys a garden update probably in another video coming up shortly, but I don't know why I've had such poor success with growing lettuce this year. Last year, my lettuce was phenomenal. I had great lettuce, romaine, arugula, a salad mix. I planted pretty much the same varieties this year. I think I even went back and planted some of the seed packs from last year instead of the new ones just to see if it was like a seed packet issue. And I don't know if it's because they're getting pretty direct sunlight in this bed. They were getting direct sunlight in the bed that I had them in last year as well. So I don't really know what the difference is unless it's like the soil or what, but I cannot get my lettuce to grow this year. I'm really sad about it. I love our garden lettuce so much. It tastes completely different than store-bought lettuce. But even the radishes as well, they're the easiest things to grow, and I have not harvested a single radish. And like I said, we're at like the end of the month basically right now. So kind of weird. I'm not really sure why that is. If I need to plant some in a different bed and see if that changes anything. But overall, you have successes and failures with everything. And if I just have to take a loss this year, on having homegrown garden lettuce, then I guess I'll do that. I won't be happy about it, but it'll be fine. I am really hoping that I have a really successful tomato and pepper harvest this year. I did really well with my tomatoes and peppers the first year that I gardened. Last year, they got stunted, I think, because of the weather. And this year, they seem to be growing pretty well. Everything right now is sort of growing at a very slow and steady pace. But I try to look back on like pictures from the previous couple of years, comparing the garden from now to back then. And it seems like we're kind of on track, maybe a little bit slower growth than what I've been used to in the past couple of years. But I think that it'll pick up here in the next couple of weeks. June has been really sort of like off and on rainy, off and on really hot, and then some cooler temperatures. So it's kind of been a little bit all over the place, which I feel like is pretty typical for June here in my area. So we'll see what happens. And by the way, if you want to see what pepper and tomato varieties I'm growing this year, I have a bunch of other garden prep videos on my channel. Go check those out and you can see all of the ones that I planted this year. Pretty much all of them. I think actually all of the varieties of peppers and tomatoes that I planted came from MI Gardener. So yeah, go hop on over to my other garden prep videos and you can see exactly which ones I planted to know what varieties are in these beds. I didn't go through every one of these in the video, but and of course they kind of all look the same for the most part when you plant them out. There are some differences, of course, between like Romas and certain cherry tomatoes and things like that. You can kind of tell the difference between the leaves. But with the peppers, you really can't tell too much unless you truly know the varieties and know what you're looking for. So, of course, I had all the cups labeled and I knew exactly what variety I was planting. And I documented all of that in a garden planner that I was using. So I know what's what and know where it is based off of my paper where I kind of wrote everything down. So that's kind of how I'm keeping up with it. I do have some tags and labels for certain things, some little homemade ones, handmade ones that we made. But I do not have them for every specific variety of pepper or tomato or whatever. So I just kind of have them in a general area. I figured when the peppers start producing actual peppers, and tomatoes, I'll obviously pretty much know what kind they are anyways. I think that's a little easier to figure out with the peppers than it is the tomatoes. So we got our one pepper bed planted. I am going to actually, in my, what is supposed to be my lettuce and radish bed here, the lettuce is not growing. I think it's in too much sun, so I might move my lettuce to be somewhere else. So I'm going to kind of take over this bed actually with more peppers because I still have a lot to plant. I have some pepperoncinis, some banana peppers, some giant Marconi, and some other things. And yeah, I think I'm just going to kind of take over this bed with that. And yeah, I think I'm just going to kind of take over this bed with those. I have a lot here in this bed. I think I could probably make a little bit of space here for some things too. But also I want to kind of densely plant things and do a lot more companion planting this year. So I might toss in some thyme, some cilantro. I had some cilantro in here and it obviously died. And just some other companion plants with these peppers. I have 2 tomatillo plants at the end, and I don't want to plant anything in between because those get so big. And then here is a little tomatillo plant as well. I had another one, but it broke when I was taking it out, so I just removed it. But I think 3 will be enough. I had 2 tomatillo plants last year, and it produced so much. It was like over 300 tomatillos from just 2 plants. So I think 3 will definitely be enough. I like to make some salsa, specifically a chipotle tomatillo salsa. So I'd like to have those to make some salsa to can up. But yeah, before the sun comes back out, it's actually pretty shady and cooler right now. I'm going to go ahead and start planting this other pepper bed. So I finished up the other pepper bed, as we'll call it. I have 2 full pepper beds. I planted 60 pepper plants, so that should be more than enough to get us salsas and dips and anything else that we need for the summer. I then moved on to this back area of my yard along the fence line. I'm pretty sure this was the next day. I think I'm wearing a different outfit. So I planted from seed sunflowers this year, 2 different varieties, a Velvet Queen sunflower and an Autumn Beauty, and both of those were from In My Gardener as well. So I had, I think, 18 sunflower plants to plant out. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with these, but I thought along my back fence line would actually be really, really pretty, kind of behind the garden beds, behind the entire garden. I thought that would be stunning if they all grew. So I just sunflowers can grow anywhere. I mean, they are weeds. They literally grow in the cracks of concrete. So I just kind of dug up some little areas in the backyard here, and didn't really think too much about like the soil or any of that. Just kind of tossed them into the ground, and they are still growing. I know it's going to take them some time. They were already about 4 inches tall probably when I planted them out. So I think they're going to grow fine. Usually it's like a late July, early August kind of situation where I ever see sunflowers popping up in the garden. Previously, the previous 2 years, I haven't planted sunflowers. They've just been volunteer sunflowers, which has been really, really neat. And I don't mind if we have a few more of those this year. But I intentionally planted them this year, specifically for these 2 varieties, hoping that they'll grow and just line my back fence line behind the garden beds. I think that would be beautiful. After planting the sunflowers, I moved on to this flower bed over here. It is overgrown with some kind of invasive plant weed. I think it's part of the tree that is on this side. I don't know what it is. Honestly, I need to look it up and see. But these vines here in the front on the right side of the screen, very, very invasive, and they have kind of spread throughout the flower bed. So I'm just digging some of those up. They're even pretty hard to dig up too. They just have such a strong root system, which is why I think it's partly from the tree as well. Last year I dug all of this stuff out to plant flowers and a couple of perennials, and this year I just ended up leaving some of it. I'm gonna have to go back in and like dig some up because it's literally taking over the entire flower bed. But over there on the side that I'm digging on, I wanted to plant a few of my flowers that I picked up from Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever, and get those planted. I think the daisy was one of them, some snapdragons as well. So we're just working on that on this side to start with. I have a big yarrow plant that's beautiful, and I planted it last year, and it's definitely a solid perennial here because it has grown really, really large since last year. So I'm excited to have that in this flower bed too. And then on the other side, I'll get to digging some more of this stuff up, but I end up putting a couple tomato plants on that side too, just to fill in the corner over here that you can't exactly see. So my husband and I set up our like chicken wire fencing on this side of our yard, on this side of our fence. This is for our tomatoes. I did plant my tomatoes here last year and some of them the first year. I know you're supposed to rotate crops, and I'm kind of getting around to that, but also with a small backyard, I'm basically gardening in about 300 square feet of space, probably about 400 if you add some of the additional beds on the sides and whatnot. So that's a pretty small space to garden in. So I'm trying to definitely be better in the coming years about, cycling out where you have certain plants and changing it up year to year. But this has been the designated tomato bed, and it works out really well because we live kind of near the mountains, and the mountains are to the west here, which is just on the other side of this fence. So most of the strong winds and storms come from the west. So the tomatoes are really well protected up against this fence line during the hail season and summer storm season, because they're protected from the wind that's blowing in from that direction. So I really like to have them here. I don't really want to put them anywhere else for that reason. But I did go through and kind of space some throughout a couple of my raised beds, and then in that flower bed, I put 2 over there. And then in my kind of bed near our house where I have the potatoes and stuff planted, I put a couple there too, just because I needed to plant some more tomatoes out because I had so many. I did get rid of a lot of tomato plants and gave them to friends. but I still had a lot left over, so I really was just trying to find space for them, as well as use this year as an experimental year to see how do they do in our raised garden beds, how do they do in other places in the yard, so that I can think about a plan for next year if I want to move them to a different area. So yeah, kind of just to fill in some holes as well as get my plants planted, and just use this as an experiment to see. So after getting the fence put up, we started planting the tomatoes out. I know there's some controversy about using like ground up eggshells for extra calcium and other things. If your soil is sufficient, you shouldn't need those things. Just because we had them, the eggshells as well as coffee grounds, to add calcium and nitrogen to the soil, we use those. We save all of our eggshells and used coffee grounds throughout the spring for this purpose. And like I said, I know that everyone doesn't believe by that, but I think it has worked well for us in the past. Our soil is actually not the best here, and I don't do a great job every year of amending the soil and adding to it like I should. Because we had to buy so much soil for the expanded garden this year and the raised garden beds, we didn't have as much to spare in this area. So it's always been fine. My tomato plants usually grow 4 or 5 feet tall, and the tomatoes are great, and I don't usually have an issue. But I do just like to add a little extra supplementation when I'm planting them to begin with. And then, of course, we'll go through and we'll fertilize every month or twice a month or whatever it is with actual plant fertilizer. But I have found that it has worked well in the past, so that's what we're going to continue doing. My husband is going through and just drilling the holes for the tomatoes with this nifty hole driller. This works out really well because it can get down pretty deep, and then we don't have to sit there and hand dig the holes with a little shovel or whatever, a little trowel. So this works out well. I have plants planted on each side of the fence. I kind of stagger them so that they have plenty of room to grow, plenty of airflow. But I like to maximize the space. You guys know I'm all about maximizing the space in my garden by putting them on each side because we have plenty of room for that. I also went back in and added a couple in the corners and some various spaces where I felt like we had a little more room to grow some extra at the end. So I did that as well. We got our cattle panel trellis up in the middle of my middle 2 garden beds. So I was able to finally start planting in these beds. I was kind of holding off until we got the trellis up, but I have cucumbers here along this side of it. On the other side, I have some loofah planted and some squash and zucchini and turnips in that bed. In this bed, I'm going to go through and plant some beets, some rutabagas. I have a few bush bean plants that I wanted to plant here. And then I put a couple of flowers and herbs throughout this bed as well. These, other than the cucumber and the loofah, which I'm hoping will just kind of trellis up the cattle panel trellis there. That's why I put those in that spot. Otherwise, this will kind of be like a root veggie bed for the most part. And then the other one, like I said, has the turnips in it, but also squash and zucchini plants as well. So these are kind of the middle 2 beds, sort of the center of the garden. And I'm just really hopeful that the cucumber and loofah have enough time to grow with my shorter growing season and trellis up at least part of the way. I don't expect them to be ginormous and trellis up the entire trellis, but if they could start to trellis up and just add some vines and aesthetic to the garden, I think that with this being the center point of the garden, that would be really cool. So a really successful 2 days getting the rest of the garden planted out. This was kind of the final thing that I needed, was that trellis and to get everything else planted. And I'm really excited with how it all turned out. There's a few little finishing touches I would like to put on the garden. We just haven't gotten there yet. So thanks for hanging out with me while we got the 2024 garden planted. There's going to be more garden updates, so stay tuned for those. See you guys in the next one. Bye.